do you feel like in anywhere that you're out of integrity
Mm,
with your own values, right?
mhm.
That would be a place to start. The other place I would start is where in the body is that showing up, and that can take us to the root of the problem right there. Because all this the mind is not necessarily our friend. The body has, like, so much more wisdom than the mind.
Welcome everybody back again to another episode of Soul Inspired. Today I'm excited to have Elizabeth Kipp here. She is a stress and trauma specialist, and all kinds of other things. So I'll dig deep into that. But first of all, Elizabeth, thanks for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate being your guest, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you on. And I again, I always kind of start my episodes asking the same type of thing, but it's a little bit different before we directly get into what you do. But it's really surrounding you as a person a little bit in that if you can think about your life path and the journey you've been on, if there was something in your life, if there was a particular event or something in your life that kind of steered you into the direction of the work that you do now, and if there was something like that, if you could let us know what that would be.
Sure. Yeah, I was on prescription medication for a long time, like 31 years, because of a back injury that needed a lot of surgery, and I just ended up in a lot of chronic pain. And the doctors didn't really have an answer other than here are your opiates and here are your benzodiazepines. And that was, yeah.
Right.
So I finally found a doctor that understood the nature of chronic pain. It could get me off that and help me heal. And while I was there, so I was at this treatment center for drug addiction and alcoholism, and while I was there, there were 100 patients on campus and 400 people to support them, right? Professionals to support them. And 80 people went to relapse school in the afternoon, and 20 of us went to pain track. So I was in this pain management program. And I asked my counselor, well, gee, I'm not getting any help I'm not getting any education in relapse. What are we going to do about that? And her answer was, there's an 80% relapse rate in the first year.
Wow.
And the first thing that went through my mind was, I'm doomed. Like I'm not, I don't like those odds. And the second thing that went through my mind, because I started in college as a social scientist, was we need to do better with this model we're using, whatever model we're using for drug addiction. We need to do better because 80% relapse rate is not acceptable. Like, we have to do better. So I vowed in that moment that when I got out, that I would do what I could to move the needle back on that relapse rate. And so that's how I got into this work.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Just to make it clear, and again, I'm just as much as the listener, just understanding your story for the first time here.
Uh,
So when you speak about relapse and you talk about getting out of addiction, are we talking about the addiction you get to pain medication from having pain management and things like that, or is this in general like people who suffer with addiction overall?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's people who suffer from addiction overall. And let me just throw in there, addiction is any behavior we continue to do that has negative consequences on your life. So that's the large, and chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. So all the same.
Right.
So uh, grief is a chronic pain experience. The brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart.
Mm,
And it all has the same, like, physiological effect on the brain, which is to create brain fog and confusion, and also a marked negative mind. I can't do this. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? A lot of, yeah, real quite pronounced. And anybody that's had a chronic pain problem or knows someone will recognize those as symptoms.
right.
So the answer to your question, the reason I brought the chronic pain thing is that stress, the stress causes a certain biochemical physiological reaction in the body. And when we're under chronic stress, we can actually get addicted to that biochemistry. So addiction is this huge issue. It's not just drugs and alcohol, sex and gambling and tech and this and that, but it's actually chronic stress is actually a form of chronic pain. Of sorry, it's a form of chronic pain, obviously, but it's a form of addiction. So it's a big picture. And it's not just people that are in treatment that are addicted. They're just trying to recover, right?
Right. So,
Yeah.
so this is interesting because this is the first time, I've always felt that way a little bit in regards to pain related. When you hear of things like fibromyalgia or, um, I mean, there's different types of pain related, um, you know, diseases that we can accumulate or get. Sometimes I always wondered if it was due to just large amounts of stress, or if you actually become addicted to the pain itself because that helps you. And again, I'm just talking from what comes to me, but if you're in pain emotionally, let's say, it might be a lot easier to deal with physical pain in your body than to deal with the emotional trauma that is causing you to get to that place in the first place. So it's kind of a bad loop, I would assume, where you have this emotional pain or trauma that then leads to physical pain. You're like, okay, as awful as this is, I'll just keep dealing with this because I don't want to deal with the emotional part. I don't know if does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's you're telling part of my story because I remember many times saying to my husband at the time, I'm I can deal with physical pain. It's the emotional stuff I can't deal with. And I had buried it so deeply I didn't even know I had it. Like I was just that was just the way that my family and my culture dealt with stuff. They just, if it's uncomfortable, we don't even look at it kind of thing. Well, that just you know what that does when we suppress like that and deny? It takes more energy to hold that stuff in than it does just to process it in the first place. And so you get this burden, and it's called, there's actually a term for it. The load of stress in the mind, body, spirit system is called allostatic load. Allostatic load. And when that allostatic load gets to a certain point, then now we're in chronic pain. Now the body's maybe in an autoimmune disease. You brought that in. Listen, we're not made. We're actually as organisms, we're not made for chronic stress. We have a stress response that is beautiful. It's off until we're under threat, and whoop, then it turns on, and we deal with the threat. And when we've dealt with the threat, it turns off again. But in chronic pain, chronic stress, the stress response gets stuck in the on position. It's out of balance, and we're not. That's very corrosive to the body. It just we're not made for that. The chemicals, the biochemistry of that. Think about everybody who's listening here, and you, Joe, now. Think about the last time you had a shock, that where you kind of got you to the core emotionally. Maybe somebody passed away, or you experienced some trauma or something. Eh, Think about how many days it took you to recover from that. For the stress response to get back to normal again. That's because the body produces certain chemicals in order to meet that stress. And then you have to deal with the byproducts of that as they break down and move through the body. Then you have it's kind of like an emotional hangover. It's like you don't feel so good the next day. Like, what's happening here? The
Right.
body's trying to release to clear the waste that all of that created. Well, imagine if you're living like that all the time, how difficult that is. And no wonder we end up with things like autoimmune.
Right. Right. Yeah. This again. I totally understand that. I dealt with I've said in previous episodes, as a young guy, I started dealing with some anxiety related things in my life, maybe 16, 17 years old. And I went down a really crazy time with that. And always dealt with minor autoimmune related things, whether it's skin things like psoriasis, or if it's a little bit of like kind of an arthritic type of psoriatic arthritis or something like that. I'm a musician, right? So I play music for a living. And I find, when this is how I know this, what you're saying completely speaks to me, because I find when, and this is just what works with me, this is what happens with me, when I don't feel, when I'm on track with the things that I love and passionate in my life with, that's just me. When I'm not in that position, I tend to build up issues where all of a sudden I can't play because my hand is sore, and I'm building these uh whether it's what do you say, what do you call those, repetitive strain injuries types of things, or but that's through tension and through so these things start to come up, and I go, okay, wait, so now I'm getting to a point where it's like I've done the cycle so many times. As soon as that pain starts to come back, I question, I go, okay, what's going on right now? Where am I? Like, what's going on in my life? What am I not happy with? What am I happy with? What do I need to work on? It's like that's almost like my wake up call now. And sometimes I don't get it for a while. Sometimes I'm just into the whole, oh, I've got this repetitive, I can't play guitar anymore. I can't. And I start going into that cycle for a while until I go, wait. I've been here and I've recovered from it to a point before. So what's the difference now? And I don't know if self-talk has, if you when you're dealing with people, do you talk about that? Do you talk about talking with yourself and kind of being aware of what's going on in your body?
Well, that's a little farther down the road. Most of the people that come to me are don't have those tools and
Okay.
aren't really aware of what the thing is in the first place. And the work that I do um, helps to build awareness. Like the all the stress management work I do helps us bring us back to the present moment. That anything under that list of things that I that I offer, they all bring me here because that's where we heal. We
Okay.
can't heal in the past or the future. We're healing here. And the information, it's so cool that you bring yourself back to what's happening, right? Because all the information is right here. And my prayer for myself every morning is, you know, let me listen, hear clearly, and see clearly, and speak, through an open heart, my words, so that I'm in alignment, right? I want to be in alignment with let my words and actions and impact be the same, and may they be in alignment with, the higher purpose, the higher power. You're speaking to me. What came to mind to me when you said this last bit was, oh, I would be asking myself, where am I out of alignment with my own integrity here? So you took a job that that it doesn't really fit your values, but you kind of needed the money, and maybe that's an issue. I don't know. Maybe you'll have to clear something around that. That's why I bring the ancestral. I do the intergenerational trauma ancestral clearing work, because some of the stuff that uh we have patterns that that we kind of came in with from our uh from our lineage, and it may not be something that we're generating here because of what we're doing. It's a frequency that we came in with, that we're just continuing, and it's up to us to break that cycle. So I include that piece. So you know you're asking these beautiful questions. What's happening here? And I start asking, like, well, let's look here, let's look here, let's look here, right? And
Mm,
I would start with you. I would say, okay, do you feel like in anywhere that you're out of integrity
mm,
with your own values, right?
Hmm.
That would be a place to start. The other place I would start is where in the body is that showing up, and that can take us to the root of the problem right there. Because all this the mind is not necessarily our friend. The body has, like, so much more wisdom than the mind. Like, the mind really can't track all the stuff that's happening. The
Hmm.
body gives us all kinds of clues, so
I,
it would
I had, yeah, I have always found it, you just hit on so many things. I have always found it fascinating that when I do run into my issues, it's always in my left hand, which is the area of my hand that does most of the work with the music I do. Um, and I know deep in myself that music is my biggest passion, that writing and music is my biggest passion. But the thing is in within music, there's so many avenues you can go, right? And there's some things that are like you just mentioned. Some areas aren't in alignment with what you want to do, and some areas are. And you're hitting it right. You're probably hitting things right now that I wasn't expecting or wanting to hear you say, but it's completely truth. And you've lived it. You probably know exactly what that means to you. So maybe I like that because the way I presented it was more like, what's missing in my life, but it could be what's out of alignment. What are the things that aren't, it could be either, right? But
it could be the same.
yeah,
I'm not in alignment, I'm missing like, I'm missing we might say I'm missing the mark,
right,
right?
right.
Sin is this, word that it's an old archery term that means to miss the mark.
Hmm.
So, in a spiritual sense, when we sin, we're we're probably sitting in the ego and we've disconnected somehow from we've forgotten our connection to source. We've forgotten that connection, if that makes sense. That would
No,
be
100, that 100%
a
makes sense. Yeah. Do you believe that the mind, whatever the mind is, has the ability of you m- let me rephrase this. You said that um it can be our friend, or maybe it's not our friend because it's going to, I feel like with my hand it attacks me there because it gets my attention. Like if it, for instance, if it was my right foot and I had a little toe pain or something, or well, I could still do all the things I do. Okay. So I feel like it came at me, and maybe people listening can relate to this, but it came to me in a way that got my attention constantly. I can't play the guitar the way I used to. Why can't, but why is my right hand fine? It's just the one that needs to do all the work. So
mhm.
but it could be the way that my higher self, whatever that is grabbing a hold of my attention. And maybe I'm really stretching it here, but I do sometimes feel like that is a possibility that can happen.
Well, I tell you a real quick story. Um, when I was in my teenage years, I before I was a teenager, I was I was a musician and I played wind instruments, and then I had an accident when I was 14, and I have 200 wires holding all this together here.
Oh, wow.
and and I wanted to play the flute in my 20s, and I couldn't. I just couldn't get my fingers on my right hand. I'm left-handed, but my right hand was where I did the damage. I couldn't get the fingers to, like, get with the program. My dad was a jazz drummer. I have the beat. It's in there, but
Right.
I couldn't get these fingers to, like, and I practiced and I practiced because I was an athlete, so I know about the value of practice, right? And I still couldn't, and I was just like, "Well, I don't even know what this is." It was so weird, and so I said, "Well, I guess I'm not supposed to be playing the flute right now." It's just not because I worked at it for a couple of years, and I was just like, "Okay, I see this is not happening." So, I put it down. And I always had this trouble with my fingers. I just couldn't tap the beat. It just was a thing. And then in my in my late 50s, I was exposed to ancestral clearing. And I never even said anything about this as an issue, okay, to the person that was doing the clearing work. But he did this clearing work, and The next day, I'm at the table and some music comes on and I start tapping my fingers on my right hand and there's no problem.
Wow.
It's all there and there's no pain, and I was just like, "What?" It's just
That's amazing.
so
Yeah.
something something in there, I don't know what it was, but something in there finally cleared and let go. So this is why this is just a small example of why I bring the ancestral piece in,
Mm-hmm.
because we can carry, like for instance, just as another little piece, one of the problems in this area was that I had a lot of scar tissue. And the plastic surgeon, we had to do this twice because there was so much scar tissue became an issue. Well, that runs in my family. And there's spiritual, I found that out from the plastic surgeon that did the work because he'd done a lot of work on my family members. A lot of my family members were in this area where I lived, and he worked on a lot of us. Oh, you're just like the rest of your family. You throw up a lot of scar tissue. Well, that's interesting from a spiritual point of view. That's protection.
Okay.
That's like, you know, protection, and it's rigid. It's not flexible. So there's all kinds of, things you can clear around that. Times we weren't protected, times we tried to protect others and they died anyway, right? Times we were too stubborn, not being flexible, right? We were too stubborn, willful. Times others were willful to us. Well, that's just the beginning of where we could go with this thing.
Right.
But I had experienced a general clearing, and he must have tossed that in there as part of it. And because some of the work he does silently, it's done in such a way that some of that work is done so quickly that it's more like the energy of it, because the words just kind of the energy of it comes out a lot faster than the words could come out of the mouth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this thing just cleared. And
Right.
it was really interesting to me, all that time I had spent.
There have been some odd things that I've experimented with, though. There was a book I got called Healing Back Pain. And I'm trying to remember the doctor. I'll try to remember the name of that doctor.
Sarno? Was that Dr. Sarno?
Sarno. Yes, that is Dr. Sarno. So you know
Mhm.
all about it. And I studied that for a while, and because this hand issue kept coming up, and I got to a really good point with it, and I'd like to get back to it because my hand's a lot better, but it comes and goes. And I remember being in so much pain one evening, and the pain was just so bad. And I started really doing the work that he talked about in his book. Um, and it was around the rage. I guess we were dealing with like the internal feelings, and this is why I got to get back to it because I have to understand it a bit better. But it was the things that I wasn't dealing with emotionally, and I was physically causing this pain. And anyway, I got really deep into it, and I'll never forget this because I remember just this one particular evening I had all this pain, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and I'm walking around, and I went, "Where's the pain?" Like it was probably the best I've ever felt. It was unbelievable. And I was kind of shocked. I thought, okay, is this in my head? Like, why do I not feel any pain? Is it the weather? Did something get, like, I was trying to take every physical reason for the change. I had forgotten the work that I was doing. And of course, long story short, here I am years later, and it's kind of come back and forth a few times. So meaning I probably haven't got to the deep root cause, but I must have triggered something or got involved with something that had to do with that pain. So I don't want this to be about me, but it's fascinating because you're saying that this ancestral cleaning
Mhm.
helped you in that way. So I wanted to mention that story, but I also wanted to ask you if the ancestral stuff has anything to do with that, or is it all just is it completely different than
It
what
it
Sarno?
can, it can, I, when I work with a new client, I kind of work in a certain order. The first thing I do is assess the state of their nervous system, and usually they're pretty hyper. So I and you really can't connect to somebody when they're that protected. When they're hyper like that, you're protecting, and you need to. They're not going to learn. So I will start and just do 3 minutes of a very simple breath exercise with them, and their nervous system. You can watch it. It just and they just and now they've had an experience
Hmm.
where they realize they have some power in their body they didn't realize they had before. So they have agency, right, where they didn't realize they had it, which is awesome, right? And now we're connecting, right, because they feel safe.
Right.
So once we do that, then I take them into an ancestor clearing to
Okay.
help them with whatever's showing up in the present moment that's influenced by the past. We try and help them clear that, and then and then maybe we'll start working on on other stuff. But I like to begin with just making sure that they feel safe in the space, and then I'll hear a little bit of their story, maybe 5 minutes worth. But I people tend to get identified with their story, and they're not their story. They're experiencing their story, but it's not who they are, right? So but they do need to sit in front of somebody who can acknowledge and validate their experience. And when you sit in front of as a chronic pain person, when you're sitting in front of another person who's been through it, that's different than sitting in front of a doctor who hasn't,
Right.
so that's a valuable exchange there.
Mhm.
And then the ancestral clearing part, and then we're off to the races. Then I've kind of clear the decks before we start.
Okay.
Right? You
That makes
see,
that completely makes sense. Yeah, because you can't do the internal work unless you're in the right space. Right. I mean,
yeah, and then, so the idea is to kind of guide, it brings some guidance, and I really like the to help empower them to realize that they have power, and you already figured that out. You already figured the thing I think that you're missing, or you may not be missing it. I didn't hear it in the story. That's what I heard, right?
mm,
Is that you're looking at the physical, and remember now, uh, or maybe you just haven't heard this. It's not necessarily common knowledge, but you can't separate mind, body from spirit. We're a whole system. So what you do to one, you do to all. So if there's some spiritual thing that's happening or emotional thing that's happening, the physical is going to get affected.
mm,
If there's a physical thing that's happening, the emotion, the spiritual is going to get affected. They all work together. You can't kind of pull one out and say, well, it's just this, because it doesn't really. I know, like, science wants to say that, and the Western medical model wants to do that.
mhm,
If you had three people with my X-rays, just because I had this back problem. If three people with the X-rays that look just like mine, and the doctor's looking at the X-ray as what the problem is, he'd find three different symptoms in those patients. Each patient would have a different symptom. One would have pain when they're stressed. The other would have pain all the time, and the other wouldn't have pain at all anytime. So those are three different expressions of that back problem. And how do you explain that just looking at the X-rays? You can't. You have to take the whole into account.
right.
Yeah, you see?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're on the right track. I'm just thinking, like, trying to get the mind to try and figure out just physical.
Yeah.
You need to have a more, it might be helpful to have a more holistic uh view.
I resonate with everything you're saying. Just so you understand, in regards to it, because, and it was a question I was going to ask. And again, when I do these episodes, I really do truly believe that I'm asking the questions for the people listening, and that
Mhm.
hope that I can relate to a lot of people listening, because we live in a time where, I mean, I grew up again in music and would consider myself an extremely spiritual human being. This is why I interview people who've had near death experiences and all these different spiritual experiences, it's very much a major passion of my life. So I'm a very spiritual human being. The problem I think I run into is the problem that I think a lot of people run into, especially as our world continues to get so busy. I look at the way people are on phones and the way that just business and the more money you need to make and just the pressures of life. And this is how I feel. If I look at what you just said, I think a lot of the times deep down within me, I know what I should be doing, but I get caught up in the physical world of what I feel I need to do to survive here. So, an example would be, and this is me speaking out loud so people can hear me, I really should be, from a spiritual place, writing music the way I always have since I was a child. It's the thing that makes me feel as connected to my higher self than anything else. But I don't have time because the outside world is keeping me too busy. I have to do other work that'll make more money, or I have to, um, I prioritize it, I put it in a low priority. So this is just my example of my I'm self-talking, and there's many other things, but this is an example of something I know deep down I should be doing more. And I'm sure other people feel something similar. Maybe someone is busy running two companies that they don't really like, but they make a lot of money doing, but they'd rather go out and sit in nature. But that's a waste of time to them because they could be making money getting clients. So do you think that that comes into play when it has to
Yes.
do with, yeah, okay.
Yes.
You're laughing
Yeah.
about it, but is that one of
Oh,
the major
I'm
issues?
it's with joy. It's not it's I so identify with that. And
Okay.
you've said you've said, you've really gotten into the soft underbelly of humanity here, I think. Certainly in this culture that we're speaking to. So here's the question. First of all, you said the should word, and and that can create a problem right there, can be a block right there. So that's a part of you that you're speaking to, a part of you that's like not being able to express itself. I should be doing this. You're you're hearing the yearning of, probably coming from your heart.
Mhm.
You know, I really want to be doing this, but I'm doing this other thing. My prayer in that space, please help me find balance in my life. And I could keep it really simple like that. And then I would just sit and listen. You know, I have this meditation technique that's kind of fun. Um, Visioning. I don't do a whole lot of visioning, but I do in this space. This is a good spot for it. Imagine you're sitting by a pond, and it's a summer day, and it's nice and perfect weather, and the pond is still as can be. This beautiful oval pond. And there's a stone right beside you. You pick up the stone, you put your intention in the stone. Please help me find balance in my life. Okay. You take the stone pebble, you toss it into the center of the pond, and you watch it hit, and it ripples out, and you just sit and you wait in stillness. You get an answer. It was really interesting.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
so in a way, and if I look at it from in a sense, we all need to slow down a little bit. Is that to
I would say we need to be more present.
we need to be more present?
Yeah.
Right. I hear that a lot.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
I think it's true. I know it's
practice.
true. I know it's true.
You know, you know,
Right.
you know the present moment because you can't do music somewhere in the past, the future. You're right here. So
This
you
is, yeah,
know
yeah.
that flow.
That has been the constant battle is when I'm in that place, and I learned it as a very young kid. I was 11 years old writing songs that were very um not childlike, and my mother knew right away, where is this coming from? You right? Because you know, it was deeper, and it's because I tapped into it. So once you tap into it and you move away from it, you yearn for it. And if you battle against it, I think what I'm getting from what you're saying, and hopefully other people can hear this and understand this, is that I think the thing that really hit me that you said was the that you can't separate the mind body with spirit. You can't separate that, it's completely connected. As much as you try, I think there's many of us who just work so hard on just being physically present, but not spiritually present. So if we're
The
just
mind,
right,
the mind coming in and making a judgment on what's really happening, limiting the space, right? We're infinite beings
mhm,
having a finite experience.
yeah,
How does the mind even track that? My mind can't track that. My heart knows exactly what I just said.
right,
My mind's like, what? Right,
absolutely.
right. So it's kind of like I have to be very careful about when I hear I'm physically present, but well, that's the mind making a comment about what the mind thinks is happening,
Okay, right.
but the heart knows what's happening, right? So this
So
is
maybe
why the
maybe it's like my awareness is more, I could have said it like this, my awareness is more on what I'm doing in the physical. And that's all that seems to matter to me. Not always, but that is something that I think a lot of us get caught up in, is just being aware of what we're doing physically, but not understanding that we should be aware that we're more than just this physical, that there's more to
yes.
us. There's more to us deeper that is under could be causing some of these underlying issues we're getting because we're not listening within ourselves. Like you said, the ripple of sitting still and just waiting for the ripple, right? And just allowing yourself to calm.
There's that, and then there's also, like, if you wanna just talk about the physical, I remember having an experience this is gonna sound ridiculous, but it was profound. I remember having an experience where, like, my whole life was like washing dishes. Like, I just like, it's just a thing, I do it every night or every day or whatever, it's just a thing, it's like a part of my daily. And I remember and it's just so I get in, I do the work, and I get out, and I'm just I'm I'm actually not present. I'm doing the work, but I'm thinking about other things while I'm doing it. It's kinda like that because 'cause I've done it so much.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not present at those moments. I had an experience where all of a sudden I was like I don't exactly know how that happened, but I'm so grateful it did. I became completely present with the dishwashing. Like, I became and we call that mindful that's a there's a term in the world called mindfulness. It means it doesn't mean a mindful. It means mind fully in the present.
Mm,
And
okay.
I had this experience where I was hearing the thing, and I was feeling the water, and I was seeing the dishes and the soap, and I was having this completely immersive experience. It was all physical,
Right.
and it went from freaking chore to flow.
Because
And I
you were present.
Yeah, and I was like, "What? This is amazing."
Wow.
It's like, "Holy cow." And it shifted my whole life, in terms of kind of my day-to-day things. Like, they say, well, um, uh, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, right? After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's kind
Right.
of like, but in one of them, we're rushing through it and we're not actually present. And in the other one, we're actually present in the chopping of the wood and the carrying of the water. And there's a big difference in how that plays. And imagine, instead of being tense, I have to get through this because I got to go do my homework, like while I'm doing the dishes, that tension versus, oh, I'm washing the dishes. I'm so grateful there's water and look at these beautiful dishes and or whatever, but just experiencing the water and the thing, that's flow. There's nothing to get hung up.
And that completely relates to the world of my music, where when I'm in
Yes.
that space, I found a tool or a space where I even noticed the difference between at times of me, say, performing a bunch of cover music to me sitting down and writing a song. Because if I'm writing the song and I get really immersed in it, I'm so present in that moment. If I'm performing, and this isn't always, I've had many times where I am performing where I do find myself in the present moment too. And those are beautiful moments. I've had some of those. But what happens is sometimes it turns into the job part of it. I'm the entertainer now, and I'm taking what I can do in my skill set and giving out there. So I think with everything, I think what you're saying is we should be trying to become present with almost most things we do, because if you can, so we must be so ahead of things. We must be thinking constantly about the future. Is that what do you think it is? We're always just
Yeah. It, yeah, it's a habit. Um, and we come by it honestly just because of the way we're and I'm not being presumptuous for you. I'm just kind of saying Western culture. Um, we're comparing the moment to the past. Is this like that? So we're trying to stay safe, and then we're projecting about, well, what about the future kind of thing. And when we're in this mental space where we feel time is limited, which is an illusion, by the way. But when we believe, when the mind believes that time is limited,
Mhm.
we're always chasing to get to the next thing. And if we're always looking to the next thing, how are we here? We can't be here because I'm I'm trying to get to the next thing. And I've lived this. This is this is my struggle.
Right.
This is my and struggle. Like if I'm struggling, then I know I'm not here. Like I write poetry, which turns out to be very musical, by the way, which of course it would with the musical background I have.
Right.
But you know how it happens? I'm present, and I bet you do this with music when you write music. It feels like I'm just pulling the words out of the air. They're just there. They
Yes.
just come. There they
Yeah.
are. And it's there's no, it's not me. It's divine. It's the spiritual space, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've had interviews over the years of certain songs or things that have hit a bit, or they say, how long did it take you to write that song? And I'll 3 minutes, and they go, how did you write a song in that quickly? And I don't know where it came from. I just started playing the music, and there's different forms of writing. I do this with my students that I coach. Some people like to write down first, it comes to them, and then put it to music. Other people like to say, oh, here's a theme, this is what I want to write about. But that's definitely not as present, because now you're creating this storyline. It's a different type of music. So my writing has always been very raw, authentic, and natural. And I think there was always this fear of that being taken away from me if I got big and hit it in the big stage, that just be given these songs to sing and kind of become a bit of a puppet to the industry. And that was always a fear of mine. And, so being as authentic as you can be is probably one of the most beautiful things as a musician or artist or writer or any of these things, right? And just not even an artist, just in general. I think what I'm getting from this talk is that we should be present and allowing things to come through naturally instead of worry, fear. What are a few things, if you could say to someone a few things that they could do on a daily practice to become more present, what would those few things be?
Well, I would start with the breath. I just always start with the nervous system because there's kind of a hierarchy to healing. Nervous system first, then you have a sense of connection, then you then you can learn. So the thing that's so cool about the breath is A, we can control it. B, it's always with us. And C, when we leverage the breath, it's always present. Whatever's happening it's always present. The journey there is to learn how to leverage the power of the breath to serve you and everyone else, right? And do you sing? Are you a singer?
Yes, I'm a singer. Yeah. Yeah.
So you know how to do that. You know how to. I don't know whether you learned. I learned originally. I have a yoga practice. I learned originally to sing from the diaphragm as a child. And then I got into yoga and studied with I got into Kundalini style yoga, and I studied with an opera singer who teaches opera, how to
Mm,
sing. She teaches an opera singer teacher,
right.
and she taught me how to sing from the navel point.
Oh, wow.
And I had a completely different voice. I was like, whoa, cow. So a lot more power, right? So when we learn to actually, you know, how powerful that breath is, there's a beautiful connection between the brain and the long deep breath exhale, the long deep exhale. So when we have a long deep exhale, the brain says, "Oh, I'm safe." So you can calm down right there, and because when you're activated and you're dysregulated, all you're thinking about is run, fight, shut down, freeze, maybe fawn, people please. You're not present. You're busy running from a tiger.
Right.
Okay, so nervous system first, regulate and calm. You want to get in a safe place. You do that by the breath. So long, deep breath, keeping that exhales longer than the inhale. Nice, long, and slow. You just keep your attention on the breath, and as if the mind pulls your attention away from the breath, just bring it right back. Just bring it right back, and as soon as the mind goes, "Whoop, I wanna go over here," just bring it right back, and every time you come back to the present moment, you're rewiring the brain, your behavior, that old habit of, like, time tripping,
Right.
you're rewiring it to come back here. So it's a practice.
Okay.
And every time you come back, you're rewiring the brain. "Oh, this is the new way to live."
Mm.
Oh, my default is to, like, is to exit the present moment, my
Yeah.
default, right?
Right. Think of what's
So
coming. Think of what's next. Think of,
we keep doing the work. This is why meditation is so helpful. And I don't, it doesn't could be a chanted meditation or walking meditation, something is stillness, whatever. Um, as long as it teaches us to come back to the present moment, we're rewiring our nervous system and our habit to be the present moment instead of this default of the past or the future. So
mhm.
you want to remake your default, and you start with that's where I start, is the breath. That was beautiful for me. It was very helpful. A musician, you got to learn how to breathe. So you're in the right space. You can use your what comes naturally to you as your tool.
Right. How do you, how does one, so, and I love that. How does, do you believe people should be just like everything else in a busy life? Should they be scheduling that kind of time into their daily
Oh,
schedule?
yes, my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, so the, one of my meditation teachers years ago said, if you don't feel like you have enough time for a 10 or 20-minute meditation, sit down for an hour, meditate for an hour. like
I
you
bet.
It's like, what's cool about that practice, because it helps us in this present moment. I had to tell you something. I get a lot more done during the day when I have done my meditation.
Hmm.
It's interesting to me. I have this sciencey background. I was trained as a researcher, and so I've got this analytical mind that's always, trying to figure out whatever,
Yeah.
and it's not helpful in that space, but I I just notice that when I do my morning practice, I do better, and I'll do an afternoon, I'll do an afternoon right like around 4 because I generally have some stuff I do in the evening, activities I do in the evening. That brings me more present for the evening. So it's kind of like working a muscle. It's kind of like you're exercising a muscle. And you can start with just 3 minutes of breath and work your way up to 11 and work your way up to 20 minutes twice a day if you can. But you want to be able to do that because it's going to make the rest of your life efficient and
Right.
you're going to catch a lot more that's happening right here, right now. And so you'll be catching, being guided where you're guided to. There's so much information right here that we miss. I miss when I'm worrying about the past, referencing the past or the future. When
It's
I'm really,
interesting because when you mentioned it and you said that your day is more efficient after you've done your daily meditation practice, again, I'm going to tell you what came to me, which is wrong. Okay. I'm going to tell you what came to me. And then I had to think through the process of it. Is I thought, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense because if I'm sitting there in silence, I'm going to hear all the things I need to get done. And then I'm going to focus on those things. And then I'm going to go and I'll be able to see that, okay, well, that makes more sense. We should do it this way. So that way, and I'm like, no, like that's that's not the point. The point is to become present and to flush out all of that noise so that the rest of the day you're more aware of what's coming to you.
we're actually retraining the brain in that meditation space. It's not so much that we're fleshing out, that we're flushing out the I'm planning my day. I'm sitting in meditation. Oh, I have to do this in my day, right? I'm planning because I've done that. I've done that. Well, it's kind of like, no, I'm just going to stay here. But I have this thing. No, I'm just going to stay here. I have this thing. Yeah, we'll do it, but we're going to be here now, right? And so the mind uh, can be quite turbulent in a meditation.
Right.
And as we do this retraining, and we just accept the turbulence of the mind. We accept it. We're not trying to push it away. We're just accepting and we're breathing and we're accepting and we're breathing. All of a sudden, like I'm a lot calmer, right? And I'm not, I'm not trying to hold a bunch of tension because I'm not doing it right or I'm judging the moment or whatever the problem is. Now I have a lot more. No wonder I'm more efficient because I'm not walking around all tense and anxious
Right.
for one thing, and second of all, I've gotten myself into a space where I'm present in the moment, and all I'm focused on is this moment. Now, I'm not saying I'm not planning for what I have to do later today, but I'm not doing it right now. When I'm having a conversation with you, I'll
Right.
do it when we're done. If I need to, I'll spend 5 minutes going, okay, I got to check my schedule for the rest of the day.
Right.
But right now, I'm here with you. I'm here with the listeners. We're in the space. You and I are tapped into this space of all the people that are going to listen to this, and we're addressing the information that's in the field right here with all the people that are tapped into this space.
Right. Which is an absolute beautiful thing because it means you're present. The intentions are there. The presence is there. Makes a lot of sense. I think the biggest hurdle I'd have to get around is, or that maybe other people have to get around as well, is that idea of being still in that present moment and being okay with that because
Mhm.
everything's still there waiting for you. You're stepping away. And because I do believe some people get anxious about that, about losing time. You said a couple times, you said we're never out of time. I love that because, or you said something about it because I had said something like that, and I know this, but it's an illusion, right? But this is what
Mhm.
we got
Well,
caught
but
we get caught up in.
it's not the way that our society is set up, and so we get kind of programmed, and our job is to kind of, what conditioning is it that that I can reprogram here? What's serving me and what isn't? That's another reason why I do the ancestral work, because a lot of the stuff came in with us.
Yeah,
So
that's beautiful.
it's a practice. The other thing I would encourage in this space, because I have to do it for myself, is to let go of the idea that there has to be a block. it's all perfect. Everything that's coming in is serving us. And so I breathe, even though I have this old habit that asserts itself, I'm still breathing here and I'm noticing, oh, that old habit's asserting itself again. And I'm going to come back to the breath.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to come back to this moment with Joe.
Mm.
And it's okay that that old habit is trying to assert itself. It's just doing what it's doing, but I'm right here.
And you're aware of that. That's what I love
Yeah.
about Eckhart Tolle when I watched him talk.
Mm.
Sometimes he'll go on these, I wouldn't say a rant, but he'll come out and he'll start talking, and you can tell that he's actually talking through the things that are coming in, and he's just aware of them. And you think, what is
Mhm.
going on? Oh, he's just acknowledging the things coming through, likely so he doesn't get caught into that, and so he
Mhm.
can be present. It's just beautiful. I've watched him so many times and been like, he's really an interesting person because
He's astonishing.
yeah, he like he make these little quirky jokes, and you think it comes through that he's just saying them. He's present with everything coming through. So interesting. Well, I love both of those things, and hopefully people can start to work on that. I really interested in the work that you do there, and I'm sure people can find out more from you on that. Where do people find information on what you do?
Oh, yes, you can find me at my website, which is Elizabeth with a dash Kipp.com. You got to put a dash in between my first and last name. And you'll find me. I've got all kinds of free resources up there. I've got blogs and ancestor clearing work, and I'm on all over social media. You can find me on YouTube, so you can check out kind of you know all that kind of stuff, and
Just under
you
your
can find
name?
me anywhere. Yep,
Social media is under your
yep,
name? Okay,
yep,
Elizabeth. Okay.
yep. And you can pretty much message me through any social. I'm not on TikTok, but I'm everywhere else pretty much on social media.
I'm really curious about your answer with this. I always end the episodes asking this question, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this. And I always tell everyone just, be present. Obviously, you're good at that, and to see what comes through to you when I ask you this question. But the question is, why are we here?
That's a great question. Me personally, I've had 3 near-death experiences, and
Well, I'll have to get you back on then because that's the main focus of my channel. Um,
they've all been the same. They've all had the same. It's been very interesting,
okay.
and every time I experienced standing in front of this being, I can't even give it any kind of other designation than a being, and I said, "I haven't completed my mission. I have to go back," and I came back.
Mm,
So why am I here? Why are we here? I think we all have a mission. And and when it's completed, we're gone. We go to the next one.
right.
That's and you talk about you know, being in integrity and the flow and things like that. When I'm on mission, I'm I'm in the flow. When I'm on mission, I'm in the flow. So I don't know if I made any sense there. I might have gone woo woo on everybody, but
No, no,
that's
my listening audience, I believe, will be completely in alignment with that. Mainly because, like I said, I've already had about 10 different people on the show that have had near death experiences, and because and it's not as a young child, I would say it was more of I would use the word obsession I had because it was helping me understand why I'm here. I had to understand a little more, break through some of the fears I had of death, and that were not just the physical form. It really helped me understand a little bit more of my purpose, because I, even as a young kid, I'd think, what am I doing? Like, what is this? And then it would almost become crazy. My mind would say, what's the purpose? What am I doing? So I had to dig deep into that to understand that, okay, I may not have all the answers, but I understand that we're a lot more than I believe we feel we are. Um, and if you've had those experiences, and um, that's interesting that on all three of them, you're like, hey, I'm not coming back yet. Like I'm still working on that thing back there. I'll be back, but I got to go complete the mission kind of thing. Is that what you mean? It kind of felt like,
Yes, and the yogis would say, and I consider myself a yogi, certainly a practicing yogi, that are, the reason we're here is to discover who we are. And again, when I'm on purpose, when I'm in the moment, when I'm present and I'm arising to the need of the hour, what other mission is there?
mm,
Right. So, we're this, like we said earlier, infinite beings in a finite experience, as in this this incarnation that we're in. Well, I can't, my poor mind, you're asking me a profound question. My mind can't actually track all that. I can't put words into who am I? That's like this. I'm not a finite being. I'm an infinite being having a finite experience, whatever that means,
right,
right? And there's some purpose I'm serving on the planet in this lifetime. And then, when it's over, I'll be off to something else. But
right.
part of that infinite experience in a finite body. So hard to track all of it because it's a big question you've just asked.
Yeah, no, of course. And you did mention we're all here on a mission, and I believe that too. And then the only other thing I would say is if you are someone who struggles with the fear of death or the fear of, we live in a world of fear all the time. That doesn't mean that as soon as you figure it out, you're gonna die. It just means that we're here to continue to grow and understand, I think, who we are at a deeper core. That could be for 110 years. It just depends
Mhm.
when our souls are in alignment with our exit, I guess. I don't know. I don't, I
I don't
might
know. I
be
didn't make the rules, so
right.
I,
Yeah,
I can't. I
exactly.
can't.
Yeah,
I just.
right.
I know I'm here for the ride.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's really fascinating. It's fascinating that you've also had those experiences. Maybe we'll chat again sometime about those. For now though, it's really great that you do the work you do. So um, just from one human to another, I appreciate that. uh, I do, I do kind of check in with my listening audience and just say thanks again for listening in, and please like and share these stories, and because they may help somebody out there that you don't even know. So I continue to ask people to share and like and subscribe, of course, and also check out the work that you do because it sounds like you're helping a lot of people. So thanks again for coming on. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you so much. Thanks so much, Joe. It was my pleasure.
So is ya. So